most children who go through abuse with parents never stop loving their parents. And if you ever really want to see the root of anger and where hate is born, hate is usually born out of admiration and love.
Welcome back to What's Up With You, everybody. Tonight we got my girl StarFly Awakening, StarFly7. I'm going to call her Star. Today's conversation is on unconditional love. And tonight's show is brought to you by Batch. Balance is a master key to life. Unlock your expression. When you're done watching this live, you go to BAMMLLC.net/shop Batch for all your clothing and apparel and accessory needs. That's where I got this cool mug from. And on the other side, it says balance is a master key to life. So, Star, welcome to the show. What's up with you?
Okay, first of all, let me just say I'm earthly enough to be jealous that I don't have no mug to say balance is the key to life. I feel some kind of way about that, but I'm going to still moving unconditional love for you.
So,
but I'm good. I'm just messing with you. I feel great. It's funny that you talked about balance. That was one of the keynotes things I said today in the writing is that I'm a being of balance. I think we talked about this before. Mm-hmm. You know how I kind of feel the way when people kind of get into negativity and positivity.
What you
know, like that. Well, I believe, just like you said, time is an illusion. I believe that we can't really aptly, fully. I think we can better ascertain what evil or disagreeable energy is versus positive or negative, because in a finite view, what might look negative in year 1 will not be negative in year 6. Like when the pieces come together and you have a more expansive view, you can see how that negative step was actually pushing you in the direction of your heart. So I'm more of a being of light. Like I talk about trauma and pain body a lot, and I did a post on that today. Like, Star, why are you always talking about trauma and the pain body? You know, we're these elevated evolutionary beings, and we're beyond. Trauma is a negative construct, and I'm like, but is it really? Trauma actually, and I know this isn't a topic, so I'm gonna stop. You know, I get on a tangent. Trauma is actually kind of like an internal alarm system for the mind, heart, and body condition on Earth, in which it alerts certain innate security systems to go off to protect you from what could be catastrophic, damaging, even deadly events in your life. So is that necessarily a negative thing? I think what could be deemed as more negative is how we're taught to process trauma and how we're taught to look at pain as a whole in the Earth system. And because we avoid that part of the school or the lesson, the Earth lesson here, we end up perpetuating things from a security survival standpoint versus a thriving and living standpoint. Did I make sense just then?
You make absolute sense. I mean, I look at it kind of like, can y'all hear my baby screaming in the background?
I cannot.
Okay. Fan back there.
Is she okay?
Fighting. I don't know what's going on. There might be bath time or something. I don't know. But the positive and negative, I think positive and negative are more so perspectives than anything. What's hell to you might be heaven to me, and vice versa. Like I'm sitting here thinking, like the baby's crying, and it's going to be in the audio, and that could be the reason that the YouTube thing goes a million times. You know what I'm saying? So you just take it all. You know what I'm saying, and roll with it.
Indeed. So yeah, that's my thing with balance. So I think having I used to, when I first started kind of getting into holistic, healthy living, I was really into this thing of, light. I'm a light being, I'm a love being, I'm a light being. And then I found out I might be more of a dark goddess than a light goddess, and that I work very well in the shadows, the deep, the recesses, the primal energy, the silent forces that are at work that are often sometimes more powerful than what we're thinking. We're thinking consciously because it's unchecked energy that creates. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. So let's talk about unconditional love, right?
Let's do it.
And we can go as shallow or as deep as everything allows. But my first question for you is, so that we can make sure we have a complete understanding, we're on the same page, we're in the same book. How do you define, if you can, how do you define love?
Oh my God. So love is multidimensional to me. There are aspects of it that are physical, that touch the physical realm of being. But when I think of love in a whole more expansive idea, it's greater than an action. Like action can be a part of it, but it is a spirit. It's spirit first. It's close to the nature of what I would say God is, or the heart of God, if you want to call it that, or universal abundance, and what creates life. It is the essence of life, love, to me. So that's what it is to me. I do think that there's like an earthly, I know, sponsor vibes, right? You can call us, this ain't no little business, like,
This big business.
Big things popping, little things popping. But so for my own definition, I think that love is all encompassing. It is something very divine. I don't think it's feminine or masculine. I hear a lot of people talk about it in that way. I don't think it falls into more feminine or masculine energy. I think it just is, and it is the essence of creation in God. And it's what we are divinely made of and from and through. So that's my layman's term definition for love.
Okay, so that being the case, does love have an opposite?
So they say fear is the opposite of love. I hear that hate is the opposite of love. Yeah, they say fear is what is the opposite of love. So again, I'm kind of like a balanced being, and I kind of don't get into polarities. I think polarities are kind of also an illusion of the earth realm, because when you get into other realms of consciousness, there's other levels of sight and other levels of hearing and knowing and seeing, which we have access to. So I don't think love is binary, I guess that would be the word for it, or duality, that it has an opposite. I think love just is, and I think we equate other things as opposite, like this is the opposite of love. I don't know that it really has an opposite.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I guess I looked at it more like love, the opposite of love would be some form of hate, not so much fear, but more like a hate type of thing. But even in the aspect of duality, when I think of that which everything comes forth from, I think of that thing as like a 0 point that is consciousness. You know what I'm saying? And I think that which we would perceive to be good and evil, or love and hate, all come forth from that particular thing. Because like you said, like if there's only one of us here, right, and we're all just role playing, even that which we perceive to be negative is being pushed and sustained by that thing that we call God, the source, or the one. So it's our perspective on love and hate that creates the duality. It comes forth from what I consider to be like the center of the will, or the 0 point. But that's deep though.
Yeah, see, so hate to me is more of a construct of what happens when we are not operating in love, if that makes sense. So I guess you could see it as an opposite in fear as well. If you really look at what births hate, a lot of times it comes from anger and fear. You know, it comes from what makes us hate someone, a lack of understanding, the idea of scarcity and lack, not having abundance. You know, so I can get off into tangents. Like my thinking is a little different. So I even think of like when we're like, I need my lineage to survive. Like if what is that? What is your lineage? Like your lineage is all lineage. So when you get into constructs of survival of the fittest and evolution of man and what that looks like, we're multiversal beings coming from wherever we're coming from, whatever backdrop story you want to believe, you know, God, aliens, whatever. Like, what is the survival of my lineage? What is that but pride? Which I don't have a thing against pride. Pride is beautiful. But like, what is humanity? Humanity and ethnicity. Humanity is greater to me than ethnicity. So ethnicity has its place in the life construct. So it's like, I don't really kind of get into a lot of dualities a lot. I'm always on like, when you look at what's driving, those are the things that make hate happen. You know, your religion, your skin color, me not understanding your language or your size. You know, maybe I hate you because you're bigger than me, and that evokes some type of fear or insecurity in me. But like, I don't not necessarily see it as an absence of love. It's like it's being driven by something else. And it's usually a lack of understanding and a lack of connection to. It's that idea of separation, that you are so different than me that you're a threat to me.
I agree with that. I'm just thinking about how we all get triggered by things we dislike, and they're really reflections of aspects of us. So do you think that hate or the absence of love, unconditional love, is a mere, what's the word I'm looking for, mirage, illusion?
I do. I think, so I think through this life cycle, us forgetting who we really are as divine beings, especially as human beings, we suffer from something that most, I won't say most, but a lot of earthly beings, like sentient beings, don't suffer with. Like, I think there are different species that are born that don't need connection. So we equate connection, appreciation, being seen with love, but I think love is something way deeper than that. That can be an aspect of love, and caring. So I say that to say, yes, I think it's an illusion. We're never without love because we're created of that. That is who we are. You know what I'm saying? Bigger than the body and in the body, we are beings of that come from an understanding of connection. It's through life and pain and our fear of pain that we begin to separate ourselves through disappointment. And then we tell ourselves that love is something we have to learn how to do, when it's something very natural. You don't teach a baby to cleave to its mother. You know, yes, you have that the part of it being in the womb, so there's a physical connection from the start. But what about the reaching to the parent, you know, the father and its brother and sister, or its sibling, or the nurse? There's something innate in us where I always say love is the easiest thing we can do. We don't know how to relate. That's our problem. We don't know how to relate to each other, but we love naturally. You think about it, you don't make yourself love anybody. You don't make yourself love your mother. As a matter of fact, most children who go through abuse with parents never stop loving their parents. And if you ever really want to see the root of anger and where hate is born, hate is usually born out of admiration and love. Unrequited love. Love where the need isn't met, where you feel like you don't fit in. When you hear these young kids going in and shooting up schools and shit, it's usually that. It's anger. It's not belonging. Now, that's not an excuse. You know, their way of expressing that is way off. But when you really look at where destructive forces come from, it comes from that, the lack of acceptance, which isn't necessarily love. So that's what I really kind of want to get into when we talk about unconditional love. I look at that as from a spirit. Unconditional love is natural. We don't have to work at that. We come here knowing how to do that. But we don't always know how to relate and connect to each other, accept and understand each other. Like I tell people, I don't need you to really understand me. I just need you to hear me and allow me the right to have the idea that I have. And because we have all these dualities, when people don't agree with us, our own insecurity makes us repel because we don't know how to, some of us don't know how to accept differences. It's like a difference idea is almost an attack. Again, that's your trauma center protecting you. You see what I'm saying? So for my understanding of it, I think if we learn how to relate to each other, we will realize we don't have an issue with loving each other. We have an issue with learning how to relate and hear each other and appreciate the differences in each other more than we hate each other, you know? And that's just my thought of it. I mean, I'm not an expert on anything, you know. This definitely, you know, is stuff I'm still learning every day. I just wrote today, the more, I guess it's true, the more we learn, the less we know. There's so many aspects of ourselves that are really just seeking the attention and connection that we feel we're lacking on this earth. And that becomes something else, whether it's hate, anger. People are not really angry at people they don't love.
That's deep. I agree with that. That being the case, let me ask you this. How do we improve the way we relate to others that we disagree with or have different perspectives on, so that the unconditional love, though, you know, I may like orange and you may like blue, that doesn't deter us from having unconditional love or that love for one another?
So I think a big problem is we're not rooted in ourselves. And because we're not sure of our own voices, the voice of other people feels like a threat. Again, back to that survival thing. You know, it's like, hey, wait a minute. You're trying to change my construct. And so, I don't know. I think the first thing is understanding that unconditional love does not necessarily mean unconditional accessibility, which means that you have to have healthy boundaries in life with dealing with each other. And I think that's something like in holistic and religious communities, we kind of get skewed as well. If you unconditionally love me, then you unconditionally accept me. You unconditionally tolerate me. No, not even nature unconditionally accepts and loves us. And it loves us, but it doesn't unconditionally accept us. You do certain things in nature, shit starts happening. Like shit don't grow. Water dries up. You know, the land becomes barren. The soil quality goes down. So even nature doesn't unconditionally accept and tolerate our, for lack of terms, BS. And I think that gets into where we get stuck in abusive cycles and then we build up more walls. So I don't think unconditional love means unconditional accessibility, which is very different. But I do think what we can learn as we strengthen our own voice, we can learn to hear another person and not hear it as conflict and not hear it as war and not hear it as separation or an attack. Like you can be telling somebody, depending on their level of trauma and their experiences on their earth, you can be telling them something good for them and they will take it as an attack.
Facts.
You know, like I'm doing my best. You're like, whoa, I'm trying to love you right now. Wait a minute.
This is scrap. It's okay.
I don't have arms up. There's no gun behind my back. There's no sword. I'm speaking in love. So I think that's one of the things, learning how to listen in the love that we naturally have, learning how to hear in the love that we actually have, and then learning how to be honest. Like, hey, I hear your perspective. You have a right to your perspective, but your perspective is challenging to me right now. I am not in a position where I can hear that without being triggered. That's honesty. But we don't even want to admit that we're triggered by stuff. It's like, nah, that didn't bother me. Well, I can't tell. You huffing and puffing. You done turn different colors. You sweating. You about to go into a panic attack. You're bothered, and that's okay. So I think that's the thing, is like learning. That's how we learn how to relate. Honesty, transparency, and realness, and those healthy boundaries say, hey, guess what? I'm not trying to change your mind, but I can't process what you're saying right now. Maybe I need a minute to come back to it. Or can we respectfully agree to disagree? And that's another thing. Conquistador ideas, and these ideas are, we're going to bring some, like, I don't like hearing, like, it's my job to awaken. It's not your job to awaken anybody, boo. You still sleep. You awake over here, but you sleep over here. We all still sleep. So you know what I'm saying? But we have this preacher mentality, I'm gonna save your soul. I got the truth of light. No, I have the truth for me, and that's all I can share, is what is working for me, and then I offer it to you as a possible solution. But I have to accept and respect if it's not the solution for you, or if you're not even trying to, like you said, maybe you're not in hell in that place. Right. That looked like hell to me.
Right.
So I want to give you the keys out. And I'm very guilty of giving people keys that don't want keys. Like my mom and my brothers, they be like, look, ain't nobody asked you for no key. Leave me alone.
Right.
So I think that's the difference.
Okay. So we got a question from the audience, and I think you may have already answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I love my audience. Next Level Talk, my man Sam, he said, I have a question. How do you know it's good for them if you don't know them?
So, number one, what is good and what is bad? Sometimes you're going to give people stuff that's going to feel bad to them when you give it to them, and it may take them 3 years to realize, oh, this was actually good for me. So thank you. They might even be mad at you and don't speak to you for 3 years. So this is why one of the things you have to be when you want to relate to people is kind of anchored in an awareness of yourself, that I can survive if my mom doesn't talk to me for 3 months. I can deal with that. If she doesn't love me, if she feels like she doesn't like me, that's fine. Like if in that moment she feel like I can't stand her, she get on my nerves, I have to respect that this is a process that she has to go through, which is difficult for us because, again, we're connection and appreciation beings. We want to hear how good we are. That's part of what the system has ingrained in us, that we need to be good girls and boys. We need to be good citizens. We need to be a good Christian or a good Buddhist or a good whatever. And so we have this concept that sometimes it's hard for us to feel like we're being bad. And so the first thing I would say is this: really check with your spirit. I try to have conversations when I feel like it's the appropriate time. So a heated discussion may not be the time. If the person is already spazzing out, if you guys are already not in a good place to hear each other, you might have to come back. Like I backdoor a lot of stuff. Like say a person might be talking about a situation that's similar to what happened with us. And then on that day, when they're in a calm place talking about that thing, I was like, yeah, that reminds me of, remember when we was having that discussion? That was kind of what I was trying to get you to see, or that was my thoughts on that. Remember that day, and I try to make it palatable. Mm-hmm. Because not all medicine tastes good. So sometimes, with babies, you have to put a little peas on with the little peaches to get them to eat what's good for them.
Right.
And so we have to do the same thing with each other. Another thing I would suggest is this: fill it out. You know what I'm saying? Respect the person's right not to receive. So sometimes online, I can feel certain people in a post may need some encouragement, and they don't know me from Adam. So I might say something like, I'm sending you loving energy if you're open to receive it. I heard what you said and I felt what you said. And these are some ideas. Hey, you're dealing with anxiety. If this feels like it resonates with you, why not try rescue remedy, box flower essences. It really helps with anxiety and when you're stuck in a grief cycle, which a lot of time is where anger and bitterness comes from, and resentment is stuck in a grief cycle that you haven't processed those emotions fully, and it turns into that because sometimes we feel more empowered being angry than sad. So that's my suggestion, is just really filling it out and then not getting offended when somebody's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it.
Okay. He got a follow-up question. He said, can you receive advice the same way you give it out?
No, not all the time. If I'm honest, no, I cannot. First of all, I can't. I mean, the good thing is I'm tempered enough that I can hear. But, you know, even in my hearing, like, for instance, I had counseling today, and my counselor's telling me stuff, and I'm like, I know, but I'm doing better. And she's like, I know you're doing better, but it's my job to call you out on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I'm saying? You know, we all want to advocate for ourselves, like, especially if we feel like what's being said good for us is not acknowledging where we have grown, you know, or where we have, you know, changed. But I changed so much. I used to do da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. So I try to be very honest about this life thing. Like, I think this is the problem. We don't want to be honest about how we're being impacted by each other. That's one of the things that I really sometimes don't like about the evolutionary, I'm a cosmic star being, because I am. But I came here to be in the flesh. I came here to be a human. I came here to have human experiences. So I'm not running from my body anymore. I did that from years because I didn't know how to process my pain and the pain of other people that I felt as an empathic type being or an intuitive type being. I didn't know how to process it. So I was like, I'm ready to go to heaven. I'm ready to go to Mars, Jupiter. When the mothership coming, can anybody get me out of this life?
Right.
And I'm just learning how, you know, and even goddess and God mentality. I just wrote something recently. Like, I don't want to be a goddess. I came here. I've already been that. I already am that. I just want to be a human woman living this life to the fullness, aware of my darkness and my light, and not judging either one as something that I can't be as I'm processing and becoming my greatest self here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said something. Well, I want to ask you this. How did you come to the point where you can be honest enough to admit that you can't receive it the same way you dish it out, so that people can understand how you got to that point and the importance of just being that brutally honest?
I think a lot of us have to sit with things. Fortunately, I come here kind of as a wayshower, so people come to me to hear stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't always come to people to hear stuff, so sometimes my stuff is like given, like a lot of times it's people who's come to me, especially like close relationships, and who's asked me something and then want to turn it back on me because they don't like what I told them. So it's like, well, you don't da 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 da. So that's part of the issue. But at the end of the day, I have to sit with myself. And I feel like awareness, man, I think we talked about this the time we talked. Awareness changes the trajectory of your life on every damn thing. Like, awareness of what is affecting you often frees you from the effect.
Hold on. Say that one more time. I want to hear that again because I missed it.
Awareness of the effect on you often frees you from the effect of it. Once you have an awareness of how it's affecting you, you almost immediately change how you are affected by it.
Right. I agree.
Almost immediately. Like, it's like, it'll trip you up. That is so weird. Like, for instance, when you don't understand what your trauma body is calling out for because you haven't given it the voice that you need, you'll begin to seek trauma. So maybe you're pushing it out. Hey, Kashmir. Maybe you're pushing it out of your own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to digest it in the lives of others, and then you tell yourself you're being helpful. So you're reading every story about every murder, or you're reading every story about heartache, trauma, and pain, and you don't even realize your body has gotten addicted to feeding itself this kind of stuff. So if it's not getting it through its own relationships, it'll begin to seek it out in the relationships of other people.
Ooh. Okay. Stop. Let's pause for a second. That's good. So it sounds like you're saying becoming consciously aware of what's the word, of the trauma or the effects frees you from it, or there's great potential for that to happen. So does that mean that we have to have the ability to use our conscious awareness to be aware of what's going on in our what we call subconscious state of being, which allow us to be aware, and then we can begin to fix, reprogram, redirect, go on a different tangent to wherever it is we really want to be going?
Pretty much. So what happens when you begin to, it's like the start of turning the wheel in another direction. So everything becomes cyclical and cyclic.
Cyclical.
I want to make another word. I don't like just cyclical. That's the poet in me. I need another word. So yes, becoming aware of your own shadow. For one, okay, I'll give you an example. So the writing I did today came from me reading a headline that the Ukraine was saying that the Russian government had taken 200,000 children. Right?
Okay, I didn't know that, bro. Thanks for the news update.
So when I saw that, I was like, I think from a lot of different spectrums. So I thought about all my African American and African brothers and sisters to be like, well, that's them white people karma. That's what they get. They done took all our children. And I thought about how we can separate, from the humanity of a thing, right? It's like, well, that's just their payback. That's what they get, okay. Or the other idea, well, that's not even happening around me. So, and then I thought about how we separate, from the things happening in the Congo, or the things happening, girl, they be saying it, That's a white issue. White people, that WYPPO or whatever they be. Anyway, that ain't my problem, So, and then you go and you look at what's happening in the Congo or Palestinian countries, and that war, and how we compartmentalize, and I don't say that that's not a healthy thing, or that there's a incorrect or a correct or incorrect way to process such trauma. But then I started thinking about the wars in our own neighborhoods. People hurting each other because they look at each other away, or the need for money, or walking over people who we feel like have less, and just all these different types of wars. And then it all comes back to the war within ourselves. So what you're talking about, when you start to face the trauma and you start to face the vulnerability in yourself to a degree, you begin to set a different tone from outside of yourself, because the subconscious is it's a vortex of energy from everything you've ever learned in this earth field and every other field. That's when you get into your Akashic records. These things are at work on the inside of us on a level. And so, you got you got epigenetics, you got the pain and the wisdom and the beauty of your ancestors at work on the inside of you. You got all these different things that kind of live in the collective unconscious. And so think about how bacteria grows in the dark, or mold, or something like that. If you don't know it's there, and that water and that darkness is just, it's a cesspool for that thing to grow. We know all bacteria isn't bad, but when you shine the light on it, that's when mold becomes penicillin. That's when it becomes your medicine. So that's kind of, for lack of better terms, I'm always trying to give an illustration for something. That's kind of what I see understanding your own trauma as. It begins to let you create from a different truth, because then you can turn off the survival voice, or the victim voice, or the what about me voice, and you start realizing the powerhouse you are and the gifts and the talents that you have, and that those things didn't break you as much as you think you're broken. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that thing that says, you know, the crack is where the light comes through.
Wow. Yeah, that's
I don't know if I answered that, but I tried.
It's all good. Let me ask you this from a relationship standpoint, right?
Yes.
If we are, I'm trying to think of a good way to word the question.
Okay.
Because it's a bit impromptu. Is conflict in a intimate relationship a good thing if both parties are being honest about where their perspectives are coming from based on like their traumas? You understand what I'm trying to?
I do.
Okay.
Is conflict a good thing if both people have an understanding of what is creating their schisms, their isms, their perceptions, their thoughts of need, their thoughts of want? Yeah. Yes. I think so. The thing, I just said this to a customer the other day. I was like, you know what? Because they called me with beef. They were mad at our company, it's an insurance company. They were mad. They called me with beef, and we got through it together. And so I was like, yeah, you're my people now. I was like, we've made it through conflicts. I said, because he was happy with me by the end of the call. I was like, we made it through conflict. That's the strongest relationships. I always tell people it's not how you agree that is the strength of your relationship, but how you can disagree. How do you disagree with your partner? How do you disagree with the people that you love? Do you get your feelings hurt and then try to go for every beautiful soft spot that person to have because they've shown you who they are? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Right. Well, that's why your mama and your daddy wasn't shit. Do you do that?
Right.
You're just like them. My mama told me not to mess with you. Is that how you argue? If so, then conflict is probably not a good thing in your household. But if you can learn to communicate, if you can learn, like on my show with the Taj and Star show, we always say, like, how people create a space to complain. Like you have a complaint box. Mm-hmm. Imagine incorporating that in your relationship. Or imagine creating a sacred space for you to hold space. And if you need a mediator, have that. I.e., I work with couples if you just need somebody ever. But having a safe space to express to each other where you're like, look, this is the safe zone. You can do it like the BDSM people. Have a safe word, like, hey, you're going too low. I can't hear that right now. Sugar means stop. Have a safe word and really have a space where you tell each other what you don't like. I think one of the most unfortunate things is that people are together and don't like the way they touch each other, or people are together and don't like the shirt that you wear every 6th Sunday. Now, if it's something that, that's being petty, but if it's something that really bothers you, you could tell your best friend, you could tell your mama, you could tell your cousin, but you're not telling the person who's actually in life with you, who can actually make the change or the adjustment that you might need. So I think conflict can be healthy. And I think when you're aware of your triggers, so just like you were talking about, I know I'm a Taurus. So that means that I think I'm right all the time anyway, sometimes not more than a Capricorn and a Virgo. But, then I have Aquarius as my rise. And then my moon is an Aries. Those are all 3 very strong-willed signs. So I'm strong-willed. I can admit that. That's something that I will tell a man that's interested in me in the first 4 to 5 minutes. Hey, I'm a strong-willed chick. Is that an issue for you? I can hear, I can listen, but this is who I am. And I think when you know who you are and you know your triggers, then you can sit with yourself and say, like my counselor told me today, your expectations for your mother is too high. Girl, Virgo, perfectionist, I'm going to be praying for you. I already know what people dealing with. And you don't like touchy-feely stuff too much. If you're like a typical Virgo, like a real Virgo, they sometimes don't deal with other people's vulnerability well because they don't have time for their own vulnerability because they always got shit to do. So, yeah, I can only imagine. I love that, though. My fellow earth signs. But yeah, so she said my expectations of my mother are sometimes too high, and my mother's expectations of me are too high. Oh, I must have hit it. So yeah, with those two things, like I had to sit with that. I'm like, you know what? That's the truth. Sometimes I want her to think like me. She wants me to think like her, and we have very different trajectories of thought. We're like on two planes of existence. She's old school, you know, it's a lot of stuff she just doesn't. So yes, it can be beneficial because you can sit with yourself and say, I know when I'm being hypersensitive. I know when I'm being hypersensitive. I might not always catch it. I catch it most of the time, but I can come back and say to my mate, you know what you said wasn't wrong. Like I thought about my talk with my counselor. I was like, I gotta go to my mom and say, you know what, mom, I'm sorry for having unrealistic expectations of you. My attempt to help and make your life better may not always do that, and it may feel like an attack, and I apologize for that. And that's what having an awareness of your trauma does, and that's what sitting with yourself does. It makes you stop blaming other people for not understanding you. And I always tell people that we think we need to be understood. We don't. We just need respect, appreciation. You may not ever get where I'm coming from. Like people's like, no, my mate gotta understand me. No, I'm a woman. There's some things about you being a man, even though I'm a very intuitive being, and I see in a lot of different spectrums of being. It's some places I'm just not gonna see. But that doesn't mean that I can't be gentle with your awareness and your perception. That doesn't mean that I can't try to hold sacred space for you. And that's what I think we lack in couples. We don't hold sacred space for each other. We act like we're on different teams when it comes to our feelings being hurt. And it's like, now I got to get you back more than you got me. I'm going to win.
So when you saw me looking down, I was writing down a question, and I think you answered it. Okay. When you were talking about the you didn't use this word, but like the vengeful retort to your spouse's or your significant other's issue, right? The question that I had was, do you think that comes from a lack of validation of the person's issue? So like you just said, you like, you're a woman, you don't know what it is to be a man, so you're not going to understand everything that he may go through or hit the perspectives he may have. But that also doesn't mean that you can't validate his feelings and emotions about whatever it is.
So unfortunately, we deal with a lot of isms and concepts that are not our own of what a man and woman is. It's like I tell people, even the most liberated men and most evolutionary men that I meet still have a lot of patriarchal concepts about sexuality and women, whether they want to or not, and whether they even know it or not. You know, so it killed me when I came into like the conscious power elevated community and men was still like, I just wish he would shut the hell up and go cook something and give me some sex. I was like, what? You're an elevated man, what do you mean? Like you wanted to shut her damn mouth. But that was because we have epigenetics. So some of this stuff is almost it's codex in your cells. You know, like how some crystals, or all crystals really, when you understand stones, they're record keepers. Some of them are record keepers, and all of them, they call them in Native American culture, they're called the grandfathers. The stone people were the first people on the earth. That's what they say. The earth was stone first. So there's intelligence in this. So there's an intelligence of patriarchy, or what a man is, or Neanderthal caveman mentality that has been passed down for generation to generation, where men have been kind of built to believe that a woman might not be as logical as he is because she shows her emotions, or she might not, you know what I'm saying? A lot of men equate physical strength to mental strength, which is not the same. A woman might not be able to pick up what you can pick up, but she can lift thoughts like you can lift thoughts. Maybe not in the same way in every instance, but she has mental capacity. So I say all of that to say, what happens is, even though women don't want to admit it sometimes, and I get in trouble because I am not just a blind advocate for women, is that women have an idea of what a man is and what strength is, and sometimes women don't know how to deal with the vulnerability of a man because she's been taught a man crying is weak. Even though we say that sensitivity is something that we want. The social construct is when you see that. Okay, I'll give you a prime example. My friend posted a post about hoochie shorts that the men are wearing this year, like from the 70s and 80s, right?
Okay.
I have an issue with these shorts. They short circuit my wires in a way to where it's like, you can be an attractive man, but when I see those shorts, a part of me thinks of femininity or homosexuality, even though you might be the straightest dude in the world. It's not true. It's just that construct of what that has always meant being in my system. So what people have to be aware of is their social constructs, and then they have to come into awareness like, oh, because it really short circuits my wires. I'm like, damn, is he fine? I don't know. He looks suspect. You know what I'm saying?
But like,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Hold on.
The 1970 basketball shorts, the short shorts. Men are wearing those this year, calling them hoochie shorts.
Okay.
Straight men.
Okay, hold on. Processing. So straight men,
yes,
are wearing some short shorts.
Very short shorts.
Okay. And these shorts are labeled hoochie shorts.
That's what they're calling them. They're calling daddy hoochie shorts, I think is what they're calling them this year.
Okay, that sounds like some feminine shit in my...
Well, I'm just saying. So I go, but not all of those men are feminine men in that sense. And if they were, they would be allowed to. But yeah, the hoochie daddy shorts, I know I ain't crazy. I seen it, I was like, it just computes, you know. In the 1980s, it was a lot, you know. And then I was thinking the other day, I was like, are they gonna start wearing crop tops and half shirts too? But you know, they did the rompers about 3 years ago. So I say that to say most of us aren't aware of those constructs. So women in arguments, sometimes there's certain things they don't know how, like if they see you as their sign of strength and you admit certain weaknesses to them, it may not even be that they can't understand that. It's just, have you ever been the strong person in a relationship, like in a friendship, and when you get vulnerable, people start being like, hey, you need to get your shit together. It's like that idea of strength gets rocked, and they don't know how to be vulnerable, how to allow your vulnerability without seeing it. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of women like them. You know, I'm not saying I don't even like them, but yeah, it does. And that's what people been saying, the thigh meat. I'm like, the thigh meat. I don't know. It does something to my hardwire. My hardwire be like, and then I have to check myself because I'm like, you're being stereotypical. Don't be a stereotypical person. You don't like to be stereotyped and you don't like boxes like that. So just check yourself. But that's what I'm saying happens in arguments sometimes. I just use that as an illustration what might happen when a woman sees her man being vulnerable. Again, that alarm system goes off. Hey, I got to make him toughen up because he's my strength. You know, we don't understand that we're not dualities, that we're multidimensional beings. Like I tell people, I can be at the pinnacle of joy and sorrow is always still evident in me. Like, for instance, I can be enjoying this conversation with you right now. Mm-hmm. My late brother's birthday is on the 7th of June. And I could be saying, damn, I wish my brother was here to see this or hear this conversation, or maybe this would have helped him in his life. We are multi-dimensional. What did you say? Would you walk around with your stuff locked in all day?
Yeah, that's the question. The question is, why would you want to walk around with your stuff locked in all day? That's what I ain't with it.
But you know, I think that's a reality, honestly, if women really look into, and again, I'm an outlier on a lot of things, and I like being, I'm that person that kind of goes into the murky, dark water where nobody else wants to go. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times most men are not even honest fully with other men. There are many places where men emotionally walk around with their stuff locked in all day, because they can't be real with their friends all the way, because then that's a sign of their masculinity and judgment that they don't want to face. And even with their own loved ones, the people that they're closest to, there's a certain face they feel like they have to have Whereas women are liberated to speak their minds, men are taught that their minds are too much. And a lot of times when they do open up into the women in their life, the women shut down or either become abusive without meaning to, or the vengeful toward, or they lash out, and then it shuts the man down further emotionally.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
So we went from unconditional love is the source of all things that everything comes from to hoochie daddy shorts.
Yes. That's what it's like talking to me. Yeah.
Keisha said we have to support expression for men.
Definitely. We do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a man, and I have done work to become better at being emotionally intelligent, honest about my feelings. I, just like everybody else, I still have my hangups, and like you said, the social construct still affects me. But I do try to be, if I'm not going to be honest with the outside world, I try my best to be as honest as possible with myself, right? So if I'm not going to tell you that I am hurt, I at least try to sit with myself and be like, hey, look, this shit hurts, dog. You know what I'm saying? And whether or not I'm going to express that to someone else, I at least want to be able to be honest with me about it. And I have people in my life that I can be pretty open and honest with. So most things I can go to my wife, or my man Nick was on here. Nick is one of my homeboys. I can go to him and be like, yo, what's your opinion on this? Like, this joint, I felt this shit hurt my feelings. What you think? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel kind of soft, and I shouldn't, And so it's good to have those people around you that you can be openly honest about your emotions, and they're not just gonna like spit on them and step on them, and you be like, damn, So that's very important. Something else I wanted to make sure I hit on that I wanted to ask you about, because I have no real understanding of what you mean. Right? What is love tolerance? What is that?
What do you mean? What is love tolerance? Did I say it?
Yeah. So when you shared the flyer, you said it had something in there about love tolerance. So it triggered me, and I was like, damn, I wonder what she means by that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have an idea. So I use like love tolerance and love capacity in a very similar way. I don't know how I was using it at that point. I didn't even know that I was using the word, because I just be like letting stuff come through. First, before I go to that, I'm going to get to that, but I just want to say I'm very proud of you for doing the work that you do in yourself. I'm very grateful that you're an example of a man who has a woman and a wife in his life that he can speak to, and a friend that can speak to. And I'm very grateful that you do that awareness with yourself first, so that even if you couldn't go to them, and that's what I mean by sometimes we feel like it's an absence of love when we cannot go outside of ourselves for something, when everyone is in us. So when we are aware with ourselves and honest with ourselves, we've already been honest with all of creation and all of existence and all time and out of time and around time and all over time. We've already done that.
I feel like we're in church. I appreciate that. Thank you. Keep going. So I just wanted to say, I almost caught the Holy Ghost for a second.
Good. I got that. That power energy. Okay. So with that being said, I feel like we don't say that to each other enough. This kind of work, being aware of yourself is not easy. Being honest with yourself is not easy. Sometimes it's even harder to be honest with yourself than other people. Like sometimes you'll find yourself being able to outwardly say something that and then realizing like, damn, I never even said that to myself. Like, where did that come from?
You're right though.
Like, ooh, how did I get that out? So when you can do it with yourself, you're doing heavy lifting, and you're not doing it just for yourself. Every time, for the people who are wired like that, to go inward and do that work and be honest with yourself, I say that to you and to every person listening and who will listen and who aren't listening, because when we speak to each other, we're speaking to all beings anyway, in all existence and through all time and out of time and all of that. So with that being said, for everyone who does that heavy lifting, who might feel isolated sometimes or not heard or not appreciated, and who are wired to think that they need to do so much outside of themselves, every time you connect with you, you already have connected with all. Just like that. Okay, back to love tolerance. Do you want
Amen.
to go
Hold
somewhere
on,
with
hold
it
on,
before
hold
I
on, hold
go?
on, hold on, hold on. Amen. Amen. I just want to throw that in there. But
Thank you.
I appreciate your acknowledgement of my willingness to better understand my being. That means a lot to me, especially when I speak to people like you and Auntie Camille, who have a deeper understanding or knowledge of the depth from which we all come from. It makes me happy. That's my new saying. I say that makes me happy. It makes me happy
Good.
to
Well, I think we have to acknowledge it, especially in men, where you kind of, people want to say that men develop slower than women. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
mm,
I know that society has created certain developmental blocks in men where it comes to emotional intelligence and emotional awareness and emotional literacy. And I always said that if I were to become a PhD and I could do it, I would want to do a lifetime study on the difference of children who are able to emote naturally, meaning that we start shutting down little boys and little babies. We shut down little babies too. And I tell people, like, no, they're not all right. They don't have to be okay. You don't have to be okay all the time. You're allowed to not be okay and still be well and still be balanced. You have those moments to recalibrate to a different space, and you are allowed those moments. So I wonder if men would be different emotionally when it comes to emotional literacy and emotional IQ and intelligence, if they weren't from the age of 6 months to a year being told, "You're a boy, yeah, suck it up, be a man, shut
mm.
up, be strong. That ain't what little boys do. That's what little girls do." Would men have those emotions? Would they not develop the same way? Because all babies come out emoting the same way. Some more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had to have a conversation with somebody about that recently. There's a male child in our family that's very emotional and he cries a lot. And this person is kind of old school, and they were like, "Well, his younger brother doesn't cry like him. He cries more than anybody." And I was like, "Yeah, he's sensitive. He's allowed to be. And that doesn't mean that he's feminine. He's just wired that way. I am a crier. I cry happy, sad, mad. I can tear up at anything almost. And I've been like that since existence. That's one of my expressions. He is allowed to have that. Don't try to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Stop looking at it as it's something negative. So that's something that men go through that changes the way they develop. So for men who pick up that mantle and be like, "Nah, fuck that, I'm gonna feel and I'm gonna know how I feel and I'm gonna express myself," it's a beautiful thing. And it's almost rebellious to the construct of this world. It's not rebellious to your natural nature, but it's
Mm-hmm.
almost an act of rebellion. Like, hey,
So
I know what I feel and think. Damn
right,
it.
right. So you touched on something that really hit home for me, and I don't really have a specific direction where I want to go with my response, but I just want to let it be known that I was the crybaby, ultra sensitive little boy, introvert, would only talk to a few people, sit up under my mother, and all of that. And I have come to I've come to understand why I was the way I was as a man before I became emotionally intelligent. So, Mimi, Melissa interviewed me last week, and I was telling her that I came to the realization that there was a fine line between burying my emotions so deep so that I would think they weren't affecting me, and actually just accepting them for what they are and meeting them head on and being like, hey, you know, I'm experiencing this feeling. There's a label that I put on it, which now gives me a certain amount of power, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be able to wrestle with it, deal with it in some way, shape, or fashion, which actually allows it to work its way through my system. And then if it's something I really don't want to feel, I've eaten it, digested it, and it's worked its way out and is now out there. So you're talking about your young family member that's emotional. Hopefully he's able to get to that point where he could be like, I had to just admit, like, people would be like, you sensitive. I'd be like, I ain't sensitive, right? And then once I read Dark Side of the Light Chasers, I realized, like, you know what? I'm a Scorpio. I'm super sensitive. I'm just good at hiding it from you, you know? So there's that.
Well, he's only, I think, 8 right now, so he's probably not in that space, and that's why I'm very kind of vocal when I hear people say stuff like that about him, because I'm very protective of the nature and innocence of children, and I don't look at them as unintelligent beings that need complete guidance. I see them as teachers and healers and leaders from the time they come out, if people listen to them and give them voice. They're learning like we're learning, but they still have a lot to offer in the life school and the earth school. So I just want him to have a safe place to be himself. And I think that's important to create that for every child. So when I hear stuff like that, I know that someone wants to change the nature of him. And I don't like that. I don't like people tinkering with the nature of people, because it takes a long time to get back to yourself, and some people never do.
Oh, it's tough. Yeah, I agree. It's tough. I do understand where that comes from, because society is really hard and harsh and unforgiving. We are as a collective. And I think people want to make sure that their sons who are going to become men can survive the jungle, per se, you know. But I agree
as
with
long
you.
as they can see why they're crying, it don't make no difference.
Well, I think it's because
you can yield a sword and cry at the same time if you have to, or after. I think this is the issue. I think people think that they're protecting, and I get it. You know, like you said, it's a shield of protection. You know, life is gonna be hard, but life is hard because people keep saying that life is hard. Now, don't get me wrong, life is hard because life is hard. But what I'm saying is, we're not kind to each other because we keep bracing up. Everybody's like, get it, yeah, yes. And so everybody got their dukes up. If we were more honest about the nature of things and gave each other moments to grieve and moments to be weak or un-okay or whatever, without judgment and being like, oh, what's wrong with you today? You think you know, you even hear people say, you think you're depressed? What is depressed? I wasn't, back in my day, wasn't no depression. Nobody was depressed. No, that's why we the way we are, because all the people from your day wasn't doing the work that these generations are picking up. They're picking up those totem poles to heal 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. So if we don't stop it in one generation, it goes to the next, and it becomes even more. It's like a ball,
like a snowball, like an avalanche. It just gets bigger.
So love tolerance and love quotient. Switching gears really quick. When I say love capacity, not everybody has the same capacity to love, even though everybody comes from love. And what I mean by that is, like, we don't all have, even if you're the most emotionally intelligent person, you might not express the way somebody else expresses. We have such unique ways of how we express and share love or care or even conversation and expression. Like, some people just aren't talkers. That's why I love people on the autism spectrum, because the autism, I really have a thing. I really think I might even have some of that in me on a level, because I kind of get it. It's like they have a very different way of expressing. Some don't use words, and that just makes people think that they automatically they don't have an expression because they're not using words. When if we really got into language, this is another whole tangent. If we really got into language, most of us don't use words as they are meant, and then the etymology of word changes over time, which means the definition is constantly growing. So sometimes we're not even expressing ourselves with the words we think we're using because we're not comprehending what is being said to ourselves. Like I tell people, it doesn't matter how good you can express yourself to another person. What really matters is how well they can comprehend what you're saying to them. And if you ever talk to somebody who has histrionic personality, dissociative personality disorder, major bipolar disorder, or any of these disorders, you will understand comprehension matters.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter what you're saying to a person if they can't understand and compute and rationalize what you're saying. It's like you're speaking another language. So yes, Kamala, they do speak a soul language, and I love that about them. And then I just love that, you know, they're not caught up on social constructs, which is the biggest problem that people have. People on the autism spectrum is they don't fall into what is considered etiquette, and you know, they're very blunt and very honest, and they don't know how to gauge what is appropriate to say, because if it's something that's appropriate because it's what they think, they say it. Just like little kids, you know, and people get mad, I can't believe that little kid said that. It's because they're being honest. Yeah, imagine that. But so love tolerance and love capacity is a person's ability to be able to outwardly display the love that is inside, and not everyone has the same love quotient or capacity, and that is something that we have to think about when we're getting, like, not everybody has the same romantic capacity or sexual capacity. Doesn't mean that they're not sexual beings, doesn't mean that they don't have romance in them, but their expression is different. That's when you get into the 5 love language. That's when you get into the different attachment styles, avoidant style, I can't think of the other ones. Avoidant style, secure. There's like 4 of them. And then you can go to some others. There's 8.
Hold on. What are they called? I'm going to look it up right quick. What are they called?
Attachment styles.
I'll say it one more time.
Attachment styles. It's how people relate.
Okay, I'm going to look it up right quick. Attachment.
Yeah, it's a science about how people... so avoidant personalities tend to be the person that's like, yeah, I'm not bothered. I don't need nobody to da-da-da-da-da, and they kind of wall off in relationships, especially when they feel themselves being attached to a person. Secure attachment style is when a person is able to kind of not be overly jealous, allow their mate room, but still take time for self and still be close. You have one that's called...
So here they are: anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and secure. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So anxious and disorganized kind of go together. That's the people who tend to want love but push it away at the same time. Anxious personality is the person, okay, disorganized is the person who is like, I love you so much, I gotta kill you.
Okay, that's the Lifetime Movie Network guy. Okay, we got him.
I want you here, but get away from me. That's that person. That's the person who does everything to destroy the relationship, but then doesn't want to see it end. You know, it's different levels, of course. And then anxious, the anxious person is the person who is like, are you going to cheat on me? Do you still love me? How long are you going to be gone? When are you coming back? You know, that's an anxious personality store. They have a lot of insecurity. They don't trust. Avoidant personality is the one that's like, you can go on, I don't care, but they really do. They don't know how to sometimes ask for their needs to be met, and yeah, avoidant. That's avoidant. And then secure is kind of in the middle. They kind of have done the kind of work that you and I do with ourselves, and they are aware of their triggers and their isms. And so I say all of that to say love tolerance, love capacity, that in my mind, that is just how much a person can show up for another person, how much a person can outwardly display the love that they have. You know, it's like you have fathers or mothers who love their children but didn't hug their children, you know, because of their avoidant personality style,
right,
or attachment style. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of love, but sometimes you need someone, again, when you're dealing with relation, that can connect with you in a way that makes you that materializes love the way you need to see it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that's dope. I learned something new. Attachment styles. One question I had was, is it possible for our attachment style to change based on who we're with? And I meant it in in an intimate type of way, but the question could be applied across, different friendships, different familial relationships, and things like that.
Yes. So attachment styles can even change within yourself in relation to how you relate to yourself. When I was younger, I was more of an anxious personality attachment style. I had dealt with a lot of death. I had dealt with a lot of infidelity. Is that the word? Yeah, I think so. Cheating.
Okay, cheating.
Infidelity, yes. And I'd seen it growing up in my life, and had those abandonment issues and didn't know what to do with it. Then hypersensitive and didn't know when I was feeling my own shit and other people's shit. So I was more of an anxious personality style, which means is I always had a level of pride where I didn't go all the way there. Like I've never been to bust the windows out your car or, punch your tires and nothing.
You thought about it.
No.
I'm just messing.
I'm a true Taurus, so that makes no sense to me, especially in my mind. If I knew I was going to end up probably taking you back, that was money we could spend on me or another way. So I just never, it just didn't make logical financial sense to me to tear shit up that you needed and then have to fix that and then still be with the person.
Okay.
So no. Yeah, that's just not my style. I've had girlfriends try to get me to go there, but yeah, exactly, burn the meals. Even that, I'm a Taurus. We eat food and we like food. We don't burn food like that. So unless it's hot dogs or sausage and you want a little burnt on your dog and stuff, we don't waste stuff like that. That's money. But I have been, the blow your phone up girl. I have in the past, in my younger days, would have looked through your phone if I felt like it was, because I usually can feel when somebody's doing something anyway. I can usually feel when they meet the person. Mm-hmm. And men lie. So, at this point in my age, I would not do those things.
Men lie.
Yeah. So women lie too, but I deal with men, so I speak from that place. My social construct.
That's why I laugh though.
Yeah. But back to what I was saying. Yes. So attachment styles can change, and then always remember this. And this is why I say trauma is not necessarily a bad thing. Your neurological system is there to help you be in your sixth senses. Naturally, you have innate abilities to know when someone is not right from you almost from the start. And that need, and this is why I say unconditional love should never cancel out boundaries or give people automatic accessibility to you, because the truth is, which was hard for me to see because I just thought everything needed love and that it would be okay. There are disagreeable entities on this earth. There are people hell-bent and who came in here to be the destructive force in nature, the angel of death, whatever you want to call it, evil. There are beings who come here wired that way. Just like there's ancient benevolent energies, there's ancient malevolent energies. And to not recognize that is to put yourself in harm's way. So listen to your neurological system. So sometimes an avoidance style may come up because that's not a person that you need to be around. And for a love being and a light being, that can be really hard because you think you got to give, just everything just needs a little water and sunshine. It's like, no, that plant doesn't want to grow like that. So leave that damn plant alone before it kills you. And I had to learn that through the point of almost going to death, a person that I was trying to help that eventually ended up trying to kill me and did kill the person that he dated after me.
Wow.
So, just 3 years ago.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry that they're not. I'm glad that you're still here with us.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here too. I really like being here. So yeah, I say all of that to say your personality. So you have to learn how to be, and that's where sitting with yourself teaches you not to push back. Sometimes you need to push that past your discomfort, because sometimes it's just one of your isms and your schisms. So if you know your trauma center, you know when this person is just challenging you and you're cowarding, from the challenge. Like it's something you really need. But then you also know, and even with this person, looking back, I started seeing it. From the beginning, I was like, he got a sling-based spirit. Nobody knows that movie when I say it, but it's the Billy Bob Thornton movie with a guy who had special needs who killed somebody because they were hurting somebody else. And so I saw murder on him almost from the beginning. I didn't know it was going to be me. And I saw mental deficit, like developmental issues, probably through birthing, and also cognitive issues. And I have a puzzle-like mind. The Aquarius in me does not like to leave, and the codependent in me doesn't like to leave things unfixed. So after about 3 months in, I knew our relationship wasn't going to work. I told him that, but I wanted to get him help. I didn't realize how much there are people who don't want help on the planet, who are very comfortable. Like you said, what looks like hell to me is paradise to them. And so, yes, attachment styles change, and how you mature, the work you do. When you turn that wheel through awareness and you begin to create new neurological patterns, new behavioral patterns, I get a lot into cellular memory, muscle memory, mental mapping. When you begin to create new constructs of behavior and energetic emission frequency, you automatically begin to change your attachment styles.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's something that I'm going to read up on because it interests me.
It's really good.
Yeah, I can see.
Especially if you're going to work with couples, it helps a lot. One of the things that I find in mediation is learning love languages, learning who are introverts and extroverts. So when you have introverts and extroverts together, extroverts are so frustrated with the introvert wanting to come into the house and be in a room by themselves for 4 hours and takes it very personal. And like, why do you got an attitude? They're just quiet. I'm like, no, they don't have an attitude. Let me give you some pamphlets or some literature on introverts and read this, and so when you start getting into attachment styles, love languages, CPTSD, parentified people, all these different adult children, and what that displays, that adult children of alcoholics and drug addicts, and how they display and function in relationship, it changes the dynamic of the relationship. Because a lot of times, again, remember, it's not the lack of love, it's us feeling like we're not getting the attention and the care that we think that we want, that makes us act out in relationships, even as adults with our partners.
Cool. Got you. Keisha says, so what about people who may be 55% introverted and 44% extroverted? So close.
So, okay. I'm gonna challenge some thinking, right? What if I told you most introverts probably come from a certain type of childhood? Not that you can't naturally be an introvert. So I had to go through this big thing of understanding that my empathic nature may not have been just by natural design, like if you're an intuitive being and you get a certain sense and pride into being intuitive, and I see and feel things, and you're thinking it's this spiritual thing that you came here to be, which we all come here with certain sensitivities. But what if you learn that most empaths are hypervigilant and hypersensitive because of their surroundings that they were in their formative years? So a lot of empaths develop that mechanism through trauma, where they learn to look for what is wrong because they were dealing with a certain type of instability. It changes the way you look at being an empath a lot. Like, it challenged me. Now, what I had to tell myself is, if I do believe the Creator is in control of all things, then Creator was in control of how I came into this life school. So it was still by divine design. But learning that it was also a trauma mechanism, that I was around a certain level of trauma and instability that I learned to listen outside of myself so much to try to stop certain things from happening. It changed the way that I operate as an adult, mature, healing being in my empathetic gifts and the gifts of an empath. And so I say the same thing with the introvert. So I hear a lot of people say, I need so much space. I need space. And I feel that way sometimes. But when I'm in my right mind, when I'm in my holistic mind, I understand that space too is an illusion like time. And we have as much space as we give ourselves in our mind. We are always in infinite space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so whether it's 2 rooms away or 2 inches away, what is space if you are in the amount of space you need to be inside yourself? So a lot of introverts are actually responding to trauma and hypersensitivity to where they withdraw from people through certain levels of disappointment, certain levels of experience, and things of that nature that kind of pulls them into themselves. It's really sometimes a trauma response. And when you understand what trauma does to the body, how it overproduce cortisol and adrenaline and what it does to dopamine and serotonin, your tiredness from being around people comes because your body is not moving hormonally and chemically imbalanced. So when you're around people and you're hypervigilant and you're dealing with anxiety, it makes you want to come home and sleep in a room by yourself. That's how people get adrenal fatigue, and fibromyalgia is usually from an yeah. So that's all I'm saying. I hope I made sense, y'all.
Okay.
I know I challenge a lot of concepts, and I don't mean to. I don't mean to be that way. But a lot of the things that we do, exactly, we learn how to protect ourselves, and we learn how to, like, for instance, if you grew up in an abusive home, maybe you learn to listen into the next room, to listen to how voices change so you could go in and talk to your parents before they started a fight. That's how that works. If you dealt with somebody who touched you, maybe you learned to lock in your room. Maybe you put on weight to create a barrier against being sexy. Like, there's so many ways our bodies protect ourselves. Exactly. Attachments and absorption of energy. Yes, ma'am. And because of that, we don't even realize it. And we're thinking like, we're saying, just like some extroverts are operating from the need to be people pleasers, to have attention, to be seen. So it goes both ways that we don't realize. We think I'm so much an extrovert, I'm so much an introvert. But that's why that subconscious awareness is really important, because you are acting out of a space of false lack of attention, or lack of capacity to be in a room and handle energy. And so when you want to become, it happens. Also, not knowing how to process emotions will put weight on you. So if you carry a lot of energy for another people, if you're one of those people who are somewhat like grid workers and stuff like that, sometimes you can absorb weight. It's a way to keep you from being as sensitive as you are. Same thing with food cravings. Like I said, I get into a lot of stuff with cellular and chemical addiction. Everything that we do is a drug, whether we understand it or not, from what we eat to how we interact with people to how we're having this conversation right now. Mm-hmm. There are certain chemicals being induced and released in us, and we don't even understand. So when we look at the drug addict and be like, well, he's on heroin with BITCH, you on chips. You know what I'm saying? You want Coca-Cola.
Right.
You won't getting touched by a new person every other week. It's the same addiction. And so how do we cure it? We cure it by being aware of what creates the false need and feeding ourselves the proper things so that we can move without feeling like we're in lack.
Okay, I have a question.
I don't know why I had to say BITCH, y'all. I don't usually not cuss, but somebody couldn't hear that word tonight.
I have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to say
this question is specifically for me. I want you to see if you can help me understand something.
Okay.
My primary love language is touch.
Okay.
I saw this reel the other day that said your primary love language is what you lacked as a child.
Yep.
Okay. So if my primary love language is touch, and I appreciate and long for almost like constant physical love, pat me on the head, make me feel good, and all of that. How do I know, or how do I contend with knowing is my love language truly touch, or am I just looking to fulfill some void that I didn't get as a child?
So I'm going to answer this one way. This is the first answer, but it's not the absolute answer. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does it matter?
No.
As long as you have a healthy connection to touch, even if it comes from a lack of touch, or it developed from a lack of touch, that doesn't make it a bad thing. It would only be bad, for lack of better words, because y'all know how I feel about good and bad. It would only be a destructive thing if you couldn't get enough touch from one source. Like, let's say you became a chronic toucher and you just
butt
would
grabber.
feel people
Run around grabbing butts. Nah.
You just rub on people at the train station.
I run around grabbing butts in my hoochie daddy shorts.
You know how people are peeping Toms? Okay, you're
Right.
just a chronic toucher. And there are people who, can't control their touch, who need to be touching or need to be seen or whatever. So I don't think that it is a negative thing. I think it's good to know if that's true, because remember, no truth is the absolute truth. There are slivers and perspectives. So maybe your touch didn't come from just a lack of touch. Maybe it came because that is your love language. And maybe you grew up in the environment that you grew in to further back to being an empath. So I was devastated when I started finding out, like, oh my God, my empath also comes from my childhood, and so maybe this wasn't this spiritual gift that God gave me, right? But God put me in every situation that I'm in. So if that's the gift that developed from me, there was a part of me, whether I got it from the anointing, for lack of better terms, or the Holy Spirit or the Spirit or whatever, that was still meant to be my gift. And the life school just fostered and gave me the ability to be able to develop the things that I needed to use on this planet. Now it's my job to bring them into balance.
I like that. Okay. I don't want to get cut off. So
okay.
One thing we gotta do two things.
Okay.
The first one is we gotta do three things.
Okay.
How do you want to be remembered?
Okay, I'm long-winded, so I'm gonna try to do it short. I want to be remembered as the exception to the rule. And what I mean by that, where there is a person who doesn't believe that a person can be loving, I want them to learn through me that there is an example of someone who can be loving. When there is a person who doesn't believe that people are trustworthy, I want to be the example that people can be trustworthy. And if there's a person who believes that everyone has an agenda, I want to be an example of a person who doesn't have an agenda. If there's a person that believes that someone can't be selfless, I want to be an example of that. So whatever people are lacking an example of things that bring them peace and solace and create what they may not have gotten in their developmental years or even in their adult and teen years, I want to be an example of that. Truth, honesty, love, integrity, and selflessness in a healthy way, though. I used to be out of balance with that. So in a healthy way where you can be selfless and still be about self-care and self-love.
That is beautiful. Just for anyone who doesn't follow me and hasn't really been keeping up, my show, this is actually the first episode in season 4. So this is season 4, episode 1 of Marcello Bradley's What's Up With You podcast. And this has been absolutely great. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My next question is, I don't know if you have seen the end of my show, but at the end of my show, I asked everyone the same question. You have
Okay.
to tell me. It's called Top 5 Dead or Alive. You have to tell me 5 people, dead or alive, real or fictional. They don't have to be ranked, that you would like to sit down and have a one-on-one intimate conversation with. Now, before you go, to be fair, when I got interviewed last week, I did more than 5 people, but I did do 5 conversations. So if there's 2, I don't know, polarities of people that you would like to sit down with in one setting, you can do that too. But you got to give me 5.
Oh, this is hard.
I know. That's why we save it to the end. We let you do all your
Because
stuff.
there's a lot of people that I admire that I would want to talk to. So I will share some of the people that I feel like are type of energy gurus for me. One would be Osho.
Really? You rock with Osho?
I love Osho.
Oh my God. Yeah, what was that book that I had? This real thick, he got this thick yellow book. I'm sorry, I'm telling you shine.
No, you're fine. You're good. Osho is one of my great teachers. I have to put these 2 people together because they mesh together to me, and that would be Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King.
Okay. Yeah. I rock with all 3 of them. So you got Osho, you got Thich, and MLK. Got you.
So that's MLK and Thich are one though. They're like one. God.
Hold on.
So
hold on, real quick. The book that I was going to mention by Osho is called The Mustard Seed: The Revolutionary Teachings of Jesus. And when I tell you it's a super long book, it's 396 pages.
I'm gonna have to read it. I haven't. I would love to meet MLK and Harriet Tubman. I will put them in the same vein together.
Okay.
Another 2-person team, John Lennon and Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, that's dope. That would be dope.
They're my gurus. They're some of my gurus. And then in the Divic. Okay, so then we gotta get some Orishas in there, which they come to me in dreams. But let's get Yemoja, Oshun, and Ogun in a room together. And in the Hindu tradition and the Chinese Buddhist tradition, let's get some Avalokiteshvara, which would be Kuan Yin, goddess of compassion.
Okay.
And Lolita from the Hindu tradition. Or she also goes by Tripura Sundari. And Leva Bengari. These are all different names of hers. So there's a lot of people that I could put in that. I would love to talk with Soren Kierkegaard. A lot of people don't know him. He was a Christian philosopher. Mm-hmm. Brilliant man. He decided not to get married, and his whole town was mad at him because he refused to get married, but he just wanted to write books all day. I would love to be in a room with like great philosophers from Dahuti to Plato and Socrates and Hippocrates, is in a room just going over existentialism and, the meaning of life. But that's just some of them. Okay, and I know that's way more than 5, and I could keep going. There's some women people that I would want to talk to, too. Like I said, Harriet Tubman, Anne Frank, Frida Kahlo. I can't think of any more names right now, but there's a lot of people. If you ever watch my post, I'll post quotes of them. There are a lot of people that I just admire the way their brain moves words and concepts into and out of their being. Rumi! Oh my God! Rumi!
Yeah, Rumi. Yeah. Rumi's a good one.
And there's another guy. I don't know if y'all ever heard of Maria Rilke Rayner. He is a guy. Oh God, he's a guy. He has a book called Letters to a Young Poet. It is one of the most beautiful books about pain and making the best of pain and how to live, not running from pain, which is another reason that I love Osho. And then there's this guy named. He has a book called Escape from Freedom, Eric Fromm. He was a psychologist, a philanthropist, and also whatchamacallit, a philosopher,
Okay.
brilliant minded being. And he talks about how every person wants to be free, but we've been conditioned to be led so much that we will escape from freedom. And that any person who tries to truly liberate themselves, the first thing they will deal with is the ostracization of their society.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're all welcome. Enjoy. Now I got one more thing for you.
Okay.
I always give my guests an opportunity to ask me a question since I have absolutely picked your brain, and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna listen to this and have more questions for you. So you're gonna be on my show again later on at some point.
Okay.
But if you want to ask me a question or if you want to pick my brain about anything that you want my opinion, perspective on, this is your moment.
Okay, I have a question for you. So remember earlier I was talking about the wars, right? The war in the Ukraine, and then all these little microcosms and macrocosms of wars down to the war within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And lately I have seen such division between the divine masculine and feminine in human form. Men, women don't this and men don't this. And as a single woman on this planet who would like to someday possibly have a wonderful man in my life, what do you think the solution is for the chasm or the distance between the male and, well, I don't want to use male, man and woman at this time in relation to each other, and how to move forward in this arena of building maybe the kind of relationship that you have with your wife? Like, it's really different now, in my opinion. So what's the cure?
I think the solution first is an answer that you gave me earlier, which is becoming aware of who we are, how we are, what we are, where we are. The who, what, when, where is the hows of who we are and how we came to be. So I think there's a lot of self-work that needs to be done in order for the chasm, is that what it's called? Chasm?
Mm-hmm.
To begin to close. So if I know that I have an infinite amount of social conditioning from the Big Bang up to now that causes me to be a certain way that is not conducive to a good relationship with my wife, my awareness of that helps me when it's time to have a conversation or communication with my wife. So the first thing is we all got to get better self-awareness. And through that self-awareness, it will become easier when we disagree or when we begin to butt heads, right? So because I'm aware of myself and I know that 99.99999% of my thoughts are based on my emotions or my opinion, my perspective, right? I don't have to be so offended by your opposite perspective, right? I can continue to hold mine and learn about you from yours. And what needs to happen is it has, instead of it being a fight between us, it needs to become a dance between us. So when I overcompensate, my wife knows how to fix that. And when my wife overcompensates, I know how to fix that. And when I'm not being completely forthcoming about anything that I'm feeling, my wife knows how to gently pull that out of me. So it has to become a dance. So when a lot of people were triggered by Kevin Samuels and his viewpoints and his perspectives and all of that, and I'm using him as an example because he's the latest one to really kind of touch that trigger for everyone, right? It would behoove women to understand they're triggered by it, but continue to seek a male's perspective on those particular views. So I know women would get triggered some women would get triggered when he would say, you need to be submissive. Okay, so if my wife and I were having a conversation, and this is not true, this is just an example, and she's like, you know, I don't like that whole submissive thing. I have to be able to explain to her what that means to me, and she has to be able to receive that, like it or not, and use that information to bring forth a good quality marriage. So
I agree.
self-awareness, validation is very important too, right? I have to be able to validate your emotions, even if I think that your emotions are illegitimate based on the current situation. So if you I don't know, you tripped, you stepped on a toy or something, and you real angry about it. Instead of me being like, hey, like whatever, why are you so pissed off? I could be like, yeah, I could see why you're angry about that toy being there. Even though in my mind is like, yo, like put the toy over there, keep it moving. So I think we do have a lot of work. I think those are some solutions. I don't think anybody has all the solutions in one. I think it's a matter of us coming together and being open, honest, and willing to learn from one another. I hope that answers your question.
It did. It was really good. Can I ask for more?
Absolutely.
So, as a person who deals with self-awareness, how do you deal with the separation it automatically creates? And what I mean by that, I'm sure you've watched that as you do this work on yourself, it's like relationships around you shift,
Mm-hmm.
And change form.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with the illusion of that separation that may come as you heal yourself? Because as you get better, or as you become more aware of those isms in yourself, and what you like, you were talking about touch. So let's say touch was a trauma response, right, or a trauma bond, and then you realize that, and so you started touching differently. The relationships around you would automatically change and diminish. How do you deal with the separation that is created through your healing? How relationships around you change?
So I think that I came here with the knowledge and understanding that nothing stays the same. So even though I have the human complex of disliking change, I've always, or at least for a really long time, understood that things are always going to change. I learned at a very young age that people, situations in life aren't always going to be the way we want them to be. So because I understood that at a very young age, I'm not sure I'm qualified to tell someone else how to do it, because for me, it's very simple. It's going to change. You are going to have to learn to be okay with it. So the best advice I can give is accept the negative emotions that you have behind the ever-changing world around you, and be okay with those emotions. You're going to have to, like I said before, you have to be able to ingest them the same way you ingest food, or medicine is probably a better example, because medicine, we all like
Mm-hmm.
food, right? Medicine is something that you have to take that typically doesn't taste that great, and you know it's going to heal you. So we have to be willing to accept it, that things are going to change, people are going to change, our relationships with people are going to change, and allow those changes to occur. I hope that answers your question.
It does. So I asked that question because, uh, first of all, you just started another whole show that we could do, right?
Do you want to do another
So
show?
sure, definitely. So
I mean, right
so
now.
changing. Oh, I don't mind.
Okay.
I can go all night, but you got the babies and your wife. I don't want you to be out too late now. I gotta get you home on
Out too
time.
late. I'm in the bedroom.
Gotta get you in by midnight. I ain't gonna get to get another show. Okay, so look, one of the things that I realized is that, so the escape from freedom, the ostracization of humanity is one of the biggest things that pushes people back into the program that doesn't liberate them, is because people can't deal with these relationships changing. So this is one of the things that I really teach, like in love languages of romantic relationships. So, you know, when I was younger, I'm a monogamous type spirit.
Okay.
You know, I'm not against polyamory, which, you know, I guess you could say I'm a monogamous spirit for the time that the relationship works, because if you look at it, I guess it's polyamory over time, one-on-one, but I'm monogamous, one person at a time. And I say that all to say what happens is a lot of times we come into romantic relationships wanting a forever with people that we eventually outgrow. And so I'm very comfortable telling someone, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of men. I'm very blunt. It's uncomfortable for my mom too. She says all the time, you just say what you feel. I don't say it in an ugly way, but sometimes, so I say stuff like this. Yes, we're in a relationship and I enjoy you until you don't know how to treat me anymore. If dynamics change, I'm leaving. And I don't know if that's the good opening to the beginning of a relationship, but I believe in setting realistic boundaries, because people really get like into this totalitarian, I can't get it out, but totalitarian kind of idea of their mate, to the point of death, to the point of wanting to harm, to the point of wanting to see destruction. Like, there's nobody that I've loved that I want to see destroyed, even if they weren't good to me. Like, that's never gonna bring me joy or peace. So when you said that, that's why I asked that question, because when people are going through their awakenings and their life changes, and they start watching their friend pool change and their relationship with their mate change, and, you know, the first thing they want to do is run back to what they used to be, even though they can't, because, you know, once you see, you can't unsee.
Right.
And so that's why I asked that question, for the people who might just be coming into awarenesses of who they are, to be encouraged that things change, that relationships shift. Now, I didn't know you were going to answer it like that, but you really answered it in a very profound and good way, for lack of better terms, good. Because you have to be willing to lose what is now to be who you're meant to be. Another thing of why I would really want to have a relationship conversation about that is because people want to get into this mindset that you shouldn't have to work at a relationship. And I don't know anything in life that you don't have to work at on some level, even things you love. Like you were saying, doing the YouTube and the Instagram and learning how to work both of those things, and somebody saying that's a lot. There's nothing that you want in life that is not going to cost you effort or energy. And we want to come into these romantic relationships, bump uglies, and think that it's all supposed to work itself out. And I'm like, no, you have to practice growing together if you want to have a long-term relationship. You have to practice learning how to communicate when that person is going through growing pains and changes. You have to learn how to practice giving room when that person is because you're becoming, you and your wife, I mean, I'm sure you go through this. There are ebbs and flows in relationships. It's not always romantical. It's not always lovey-dovey. You might not even wake up some morning and be like, man, that person getting on my nerves. But the commitment that you have to each other and the willingness to give each other to room to have space to be in different emotions and different mind states and different levels of development is so important. And what people do is when they start watching their mate grow, they begin to become smothering. And that is the worst thing you can do when somebody you're with is growing, is snuff the life out of them. Because if they're growing in a certain direction, they will end up cutting you off to get that growth. Think of a roach trying to live in your house, like a water bug. Mm-hmm. Have you ever sprayed it or tried to flush it or run water on it? That boy, them things try to live.
Right.
And that is the same thing a person coming into awareness of themselves is going to do. You will become collateral damage.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that sometimes I wish that we could, or at least I wish that I could. You know how physics, quantum physics, they say you could look at things and everything's in motion, but it's really all just one primordial soup of atoms and quarks and all of this other stuff. I wish that I could see or show people that as a reality so that they could understand that everything is truly, truly changing. This whole thing is really, really moving at a really fast pace. And if you can understand that, you can be better prepared for the changes that are going to come, because we spend so much time, like people say life is short. Life is long. You spend a long time playing your avatar here. Most of it. You know what I'm saying? If you make it to your average life expectancy, that's a long time to play one role. But you're not, because the person who started this interview, the two people who began this interview aren't the same two people who are going to end this interview. Right?
Definitely not.
So, I wish everyone could see and understand, have the God eagle eye and understand the changes. Let me hit these comments right quick before we sign off. Keisha said, yes, indeed. Learning who two are a team, that's one, but still singular beings. And my wife said, you have to give people the space to grow and adapt. So
it's true. That's one of the hardest things, because trauma, when you have abandonment issues, growing and adapting, space is always triggering that, like, they gotta go, they gonna leave, don't leave me. So it's so funny that's why I really am a big advocate of learning your pain body, so that you can not only give other people room and space to grow and adapt, but to give yourself room to grow and adapt without feeling guilty. And speaking as a woman and a cosmic mother, I'm not a physical mother. My babies went back to heaven from my womb. I had miscarriages, but as a cosmic mother that has given birth and had been a midwife to many cosmic births, as women, we have, the way men have been taught to be emotionally, societally, emotionally illiterate, women have been taught to be sacrificial. And so sometimes as women, we are hard on ourselves when we need rest, when we can't do it all, when we can't figure everything out, when we need quiet or we need rest. It's like, but I'm a mom. I got to be a mom right now. And I'm a wife. I got to be a wife right now. And one of the things that I tell people, I talked to a lady the other day and she was like, I don't remember any of the stuff that I remember from college. I've been a mother for the last 10 years and that's all I am now. And I said, don't you say that. I said, I want you to remember that you are more than a mom and you are more than a wife. And she started calling me doctor. She was like, you need to be the doctor, because I told you I work for her. And she was like, you just did so much for my heart right now. And so that's one of the things that I think as women, we don't give ourselves permission to rest or to need to grow or not be okay. And I think men do it too in their own way. But, again, this is my woman construct. So let me have it for it. We have an issue, and we've been taught to give up our identity for our husband. Men are not taught to give up their identity for their wife. They're taught to maybe give up their money and their time for their wife, but not their identity. They can still be who they are. Women are taught to give up their identity to be a mother and an identity to be a wife. And their identity if they want to be in business, like so many things. Like, well, if you want to be a businesswoman, you can't be a mama and a wife too. You got to be one or the other. And I think men are taught more to have it all, where women are taught you can't really have it all. You can be it all for somebody else. So that's just social constructs. I can be wrong, and I'm willing to hear the man's perspective. But you are right. You do have to be supportive and grow.
Yeah, so my wife said you have to be supportive in the growth, even if you don't understand it at the time. Camille said yes, they need to be perfect example. And Keisha said we talked about this last night. One more thing, one more response to everything you just said, and then we're gonna sign off. I agree with you that about women. What's the opposite of expanding? Who use like deflating who they are?
Deflating.
Well, the point that I was gonna make is that
Con-
you're right. You got it?
constriction. Constrictive.
Yeah, so right, that's a perfect word. So women are taught and forced to be more constricted with who they are and to begin to identify more with their labels of wife and mother and things of that nature. And I'll tell you from a man's perspective, what we are forced to do is to be more expansive of our role, right? So I'm a man, I'm naturally a protector. So as my family grows, I become contract. Mimi said contract. Um, Men are forced to expand, sometimes beyond their capabilities, right? So I have a
I
family, so I have to
agree.
be more protective. I have to make more money. I have to be able to provide more. And if it's not enough, then society will look at me or the guy and be like, oh, he's not a real man because he's not doing this or whatever the case may be. So I think we all deal with, you know, the spice of life of societal constructs, but that's okay. Hopefully that helps you understand it from a guy's perspective. So
It does. And I do agree. I think that's the truth, but I can go on forever. So if you want to do another show and you have time, we can. If not, we can do it another night. I'm open. I really have enjoyed the exchange. I've enjoyed all of the people listening. Um, it's been a beautiful I think it's been a poignant conversation on the ways that unconditional love show up, which is how you identify, how you express, how you meet yourself, how you meet others. So even though it may seem like we got away from unconditional love, we really didn't. All of those things, the social constructs that get in the way of us being able to love each other unconditionally, and understanding that accessibility is not unconditional love, that people don't get a pass in your life without showing certain behaviors and it being mutually beneficial and reciprocal, which is why I think we should do a relationship show.
okay, well let's do it. We'll set it up soon, so we'll make sure that it's a part of the same season.
Okay.
And I appreciate you sitting down with me. I always call my guests after the show, but I don't have your number. So when we get off of him, DM me your number. I'll call you. And I appreciate you coming on. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to talk to you again and for a longer setting. Thank you, Auntie Camille. Auntie Camille said great interview. So yeah, it's nice to meet you. I love you. Give me your
I love you
number.
too.
I'll hit you up.
Okay.
And we can do that. All right?
Yay! It was nice meeting all the new people in the room. Love Jones, your wife, Smile Just Cuz. Is that your wife? Yes, your wife, yes. And there was another person, I guess who's Mimi?
Melissa. Is Melissa still in here? Let me check, see if she's still in here. Melissa, yeah, I am just me _ always. So let me do this right
Yeah, I
quick.
think I saw her posting too. So it was just a pleasure meeting everyone. I love your energy. I love your spirit. I love your spirit. The people that came in the room from you are a reflection of that. All my peoples that came through, thank you so much. I love the positive energy exchange, and I'm just grateful that these things in time are creating new paradigms. And I think we're seeing the birth of so many new things from these kind of conversations. And this is the beauty of what social media offers: another voice, another way of reasoning, other options. And I'm just very happy to see us growing as a cosmic and human family.
Cool. All love. Y'all be good. We love y'all. Y'all be blessed. Mimi did this really well last week, so I got to make sure I get it right. If you follow Star, but you don't follow me, follow me. If you follow me, but you don't follow Star, follow Star. I did it backwards, so I got to work on it. I got to go back to the drawing board. But it's all
You're
good,
learning.
y'all.
That's beautiful. We got to learn.
Yeah, we're constantly learning. All right, y'all. We out. Peace.
Peace.